it is time for me to do an updated bookshelf tour. And I think last time I did this was maybe 2016, I think. So it's been a while, so let's get started. So first and foremost, as you can see behind me, this is my bookshelf. But I'm not going to start over here. I'm actually going to start with the two bins I have under my bed full of books. And yeah, and also while I'm going through, I will tell you how I have my bookshelf organized and also what books I have and haven't read. So let's get started. So as you can see, I have this bin here and then this bin under here, which we'll dig out in a sec. But with this bin, these are all fantasy books. And they're all done with alphabetical order, or as close to alphabetical as I could get sticking books in here. But yeah, so let's get started. So first, we have an ARC copy of Enchantress by Amy Butler Greenfield, which I won from back in 2013 from Goodreads, and I have read this. Then we have Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, which I have not read. Then we have Hallowed Be Thy Name by Amy McLean, who is a YouTuber I adore, and I haven't read this one yet. I've read her first two books, which I'll show you later, but I haven't read Hallowed Be Thy Name yet. Then we have Cinder by Marissa Meyer, which I still haven't read yet. Then we have Vampire Kisses the Beginning by Ellen Schreiber, and this book contains, you can't see it because it's blurry, but Vampire Kisses, Kissing Coffins, and Vampireville, the first three books in the Vampire Kisses series, and I have read all three of these. I haven't finished the Vampire Kisses series, but I want to get the rest of the books in this series. Then I have The Vampire Diaries, The Awakening and the Struggle bind-up by L.J. Smith, and I actually reread this last year, as you can see with all my stickies, and I did enjoy it, but I did have a lot of issues with it, as you can see. Then I have The Vampire Diaries, The Fury and Dark Reunion bind-up by L.J. Smith. I have read this, but it's been a while. Then we have The Vampire Diaries, The Return Night Owl by L.J. Smith. I have read this, but it's been a while. Then I have The Vampire Diaries, The Return Shadow Souls by L.J. Smith, and I have not read this one. I think I may have read half of it, but I know I didn't finish it, so. Then we have The Vampire Diaries, The Return Midnight by L.J. Smith, and I have not read this one. Then we have Balefire by Keat Tiernan, which is a bind-up of the 4 books in the series, which are A Chalice of Wind, Circle of Ashes, A Feather of Stone, and A Necklace of Water. And I have not read Balefire yet. Then I have the Sweep series by Keat Tiernan. This is the first bind-up of Book of Shadows, The Coven, and Blood Witch. I have read this. Then we have bind-up 2, Dark Magic, Awakening, and Spellbound. Have read it. Then we have bind-up 3, The Calling, Changeling, and Strife. I've read it. Bind-up 4, Seeker, Origins, and Eclipse. I've read it. And the final bind-up 5, Reckoning, Full Circle, and Night's Child, and I have read it. Here's my second bin, and these are mainly full of adult novels, so let's get started. Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West by Gregory Maguire, which I have not read. A Princess in Theory by Alyssa Cole, which I have not read yet. My Sister's Keeper by Jodi Picoult, which I have not read yet. Sing You Home by Jodi Picoult, I have not read yet. A Walk to Remember by Nicholas Sparks, I've read. Safe Haven by Nicholas Sparks, I've not read yet. The Best of Me by Nicholas Sparks, I've read. The Longest Ride by Nicholas Sparks, I've not read yet. And The Notebook by Nicholas Sparks, which I have not read yet. Then we have Room by Emma Donoghue, which I have not read yet. The Wedding Date by Jasmine, I'm probably going to butcher her name, but Gulroy. The Known World by Edward P. Jones, which I've read. My Dear Hamilton by Stephanie Dre and Laura Kamoyi, I believe. I probably butchered that, but I have not read yet. Big Little Lies by Leanne Moriarty, I have not read yet. And these next two will be the other Amy McLean books I was telling you about, but first we have Walk On, and I've read, and Celestial Land and Sea, which I've read. Then we have Me Before You by Jojo Moyes, I've read. After You by Jojo Moyes, which I've read. Silver Linings Playbook by Matthew Quick, I've read. Plain Truth by Jodi Picoult, I have not read yet. Dear John by Nicholas Sparks, which I have not read yet. The Choice by Nicholas Sparks, which I have not read yet. The Last Song by Nicholas Sparks, which I've read. The Lucky One by Nicholas Sparks, I've not read yet. The Help by Catherine Stalker, which I've not read yet. And then finally, my Downton Abbey, The Complete Script Season 1 by Julian Fellows, which I've skimmed through but not fully read. Alright, now we're going to start with this top shelf, which all my books are alphabetized by author's last name, but this shelf has some sci-fi, mystery thriller, horror, and behind it is all my Stephenie Meyer, Star Wars, Doctor Who, and J.K. Rowling. So let's get started. First, up here up top, we have this Glee official William McKinley High School Yearbook, which is just some fun little Glee thing I saw at half price, and I was like, I'm gonna get it. Then we have Gallow Hill by Lois Duncan, which I've not read yet. The Shining by Stephen King, which I've not read yet. I Know What You Did Last Summer by Lois Duncan, which I've not read yet. Horns by Joe Hill, which I've not read yet. The Whisper in Darkness, H.P. Lovecraft, which I've not read yet. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies by Jane Austen and Seth Grahame-Smith, which I've read. The Merciless by Danielle Vega, which I've not read yet. And we have In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware, which I've not read yet. And that is my little horror section. So now we're going to go on to my kind of mystery thriller section. So we have Counterfeit Sun by Elaine Marie Alvin, which I've read. Flowers in the Attic by V.C. Andrews, which I've read. Killing Mr. Griffin by Lois Duncan, which I've read. Red Sparrow by Jason Matthews, which I've not read yet. Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn, which I've not read yet. Double Identity by Margaret Peterson Haddix, which I've read. Pretty Baby by Mary Kubica, which I've read. The Good Girl by Mary Kubica, which I've not read. I Hunt Killers by Barry Lyga, which I've not read yet. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest, all by Stieg Larsson, and I've not read any of them. Then we have Veronica Mars, The $1,000 Tan Line by Rob Thomas, Jennifer Graham, I've not read yet. Then we have Sam Keys and the Runaway Elf by Wendelin Van Dranen, which I've read. Then we have The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, which I've read. Then we have Red Rising by Pierce Brown, which I've not read. And I should also mention that now we're kind of in the sci-fi section of my books. Then we have We Are Ants by Sean David Hutchinson, which I've not read yet. Then we have Legend by Marie Lu, which I've read. And I don't have it right here, but Prodigy by Marie Lu, which I'm currently reading, goes right here. And then Champion by Marie Lu, which I have not read yet. I have The 100 by Cass Morgan, which I read. Then up here we have Darth Plagueis by James Luceno, which I've not read yet. Kenobi by John Jackson Miller, which I've not read yet. And Catalyst by James Luceno, which I've not read yet. Alright, now it's time to show you all the books back here. So first up here we have Doctor Who, A History of the Humankind. Then Doctor Who Heroes and Monsters collection, which is basically just a bunch of random short stories. Then we have Star Wars, A Certain Point of View, which is a bunch of short stories. Then we have Star Wars Lost Stars by Claudia Gray. Then we have Rogue One, A Star Wars Story by Alexander Freed. And The Force Awakens by Alan Dean Foster. We have The Cuckoo's Calling and the Silkworm by Robert Galbraith. The Casual Vacancy by J.K. Rowling. Then we have Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by J.K. Rowling. Then we have my Stephenie Meyer section, so let's get started. First we have The Host by Stephenie Meyer. Then we have Twilight, the Director's Handbook by Catherine Hardwicke. Then we have The Chemist by Stephenie Meyer. Then we have Volume 1 and 2 of the graphic novel of Twilight. Then we have the official illustrated guide of Twilight. Then Breaking Dawn, The Short Second Life of Bree Tanner, Eclipse, New Moon, Twilight, and Life and Death. Then my very battered copy of Twilight. Then we have more Star Wars. We have Thrawn. So this next shelf is mainly young adult / children's / some fantasy sci-fi. So let's just get started. Also, Evidolic, protecting my books. Weird, I know, but whatever. So first we're going to start over here. I have the Selection Trilogy, Selection, Elite, and The One, all by Kira Katz, and I've read all 3. Then we have Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay, all by Suzanne Collins, and I read them. Then we have Because of Winn-Dixie by Kate DiCamillo, which I've read. Then we have A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. I can't pronounce her last name, but I haven't read it yet. I have In the Year of the Boar and Jackie Robinson by Bette Bow Lord, which I've read. I have the first book in the A Series of Unfortunate Events series by Lemony Snicket, The Bad Beginning, which I've not read yet. Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry by Mildred D. Taylor, which I've read. I have The Giver by Lois Lowry, which I haven't read yet. I have Beatrix Potter, Treasured Tales, I've read. The Land of Stories, The Wishing Spell, The Enchantress Returns, A Grim Morning and Beyond the Kingdoms, all by Chris Colfer. And I've read The Wishing Spell, Enchantress Returns. I have not read A Grim Morning or Beyond the Kingdoms yet, and I also need to get books 5 and 6 because these are the first 4. And this whole little section right here is basically kind of like my children's section, and now we're going to be moving on to the young adult. So first we have Speak by Lori Hollis Anderson. I've read. Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl by Jessie Andrews. I've not read yet. 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher. I've read. Stolen by Lucy Christopher, which I've read. Struck by Lightning by Chris Colfer. I've not read yet. Then we have all my Ellen Hopkins books that I own. We have Crank, Burned, Impulse Glass, Identical, Fallout, and Tricks. I have read up to Glass. I've not read Identical, Fallout, or Tricks yet. So first we have Dash and Lily's Book of Dares by Rachel Cohn and David Levithan. Over here we have Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist by Rachel Cohn and David Levithan. I've read Nick and Nora. I've not read Dash and Lily. Then we have Midnight Sun by Trish Cook, not read. Along for the Ride by Sarah Dessen, have not read yet. Perfect Chemistry and Rules of Attraction by Simone Alcalez. I've read both. I've also read Chain Reaction, but I didn't like it enough to buy my own physical copy. Then we have If I Stay by Gail Foreman, and then I have Just One, a bind-up of Just One Day, Just One Year, and Just One Night, all by Gail Foreman. Have not read either Gail Foreman books. Then I have To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. I have not read. I also have I Was Here by Gail Foreman, which I've not read yet. I have Letters from Rivka by Karen Heath, which I've read. The Duff by Cody Keplinger, I've read. Secret Life of Bees by Simon Kidd, I've read. Every Day by David Levithan, have not read yet. Belle Teal by Anne M. Martin, I've read. Then we have Since You've Been Gone by Morgan Matson, I've not read. Then I have Dumplin' by Julie Murphy, I've not read. All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven, have not read. Before I Fall by Lauren Oliver, have not read. Anna and the French Kiss and Lola and the Boy Next Door by Stephanie Perkins, I've read. And I've also read Isla and the Happily Ever After. I just haven't gotten a paperback copy of it yet. I want a paperback, but every bookstore I go to for some reason still has the hardcover. So I'm still waiting to get Isla. Anyway, Define Normal by Julie Ann Peters, I've read. Esperanza Rising by Pam Munez Ryan, I've read. Holes by Louis Sacker, I've read. Living Dead Girl by Elizabeth Scott, I've not read. The Way I Used to Be by Amber Smith, I have not read yet. Flipped by Wendelin Van Dranen, I've read. Everything by Nicola Yoon, I've read. The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak, I've not read yet. Stranger Than Fan Fiction by Chris Colfer, I've not read yet. Alex and Eliza by Melissa De La Cruz, have not read yet. The Isle of Lost by Melissa De La Cruz, have not read yet. An Abundance of Catherines, Looking for Alaska, Paper Towns, and Will Grayson, The Fault in Our Stars, and Turtles All the Way Down, all by John Green. I have read Looking for Alaska, Paper Towns, Fault in Our Stars. I have not read Catherines, Will Grayson, or Turtles All the Way Down. This is where it ends by, I'm going to butcher this name, Marique Nijkamp. I've not read yet. Eleanor and Park and Fangirl by Rainbow Roel. I hope I pronounced her last name right. I've only read Eleanor and Park. I've not read Fangirl yet. Then I have Black Widow Forever Read by Margaret Stoll. Have not read yet. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. Have not read yet. Okay, this next shelf is mainly classics and biographies, so let's get started. First, you can't really see it, but I have this little edition of Emma by Jane Austen, which I've read. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Have not read. 1984 by George Orwell. I've read. The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Have not read. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I've read. Dracula by Bram Stoker. Have not read. Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. Have not read. Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, have not read. The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde, I've read. Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe by Fanny Flagg, have not read. Animal Farm by George Orwell, have not read. Another copy of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov, have not read. I have another copy of Emma. And I have Mansfield Park by Jane Austen, I have not read. Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen, which I've read. Persuasion by Jane Austen, which I've read. Pride and Prejudice, which I've read. Sense and Sensibility, I have not read. Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, which I've not read. I have Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll, which I've not read. Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie, I've not read. And then this big edition of Edgar Allan Poe, which I've not read yet. Okay, then right here, I know it's going to be hard to see, but we have the complete Sherlock Holmes Volume 1 and Volume 2 by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, have not read. The Beautiful and the Damned and the Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I've read Great Gatsby, I've not read The Beautiful and the Damned. The Princess Bride by William Goldman, I've not read. The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway, I've read. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, have not read. Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk, I can't say his last name, but I've not read it. The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, have not read yet. The Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, have not read yet. Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare, I've read. Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, have not read yet. Then over here we have Macbeth and the Taming of the Shrew by William Shakespeare. I've read Macbeth, haven't read Taming of the Shrew yet. Then we have The Color Purple by Alice Walker, have not read yet. And then A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf, have not read yet. Then I have these really pretty, like, leather-bound editions of classics. I have Hans Christian Andersen tales, Aesop's Fables, Sense and Sensibility, The Wizard of Oz, Jane Eyre, The Brothers Grimm, Frankenstein, Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and Dracula. Out of all of these, I have read Frankenstein. Those were all my classics. Now we're moving on to my biographies that I own. So first we have You're Never Weird on the Internet Almost by Felicia Day. A Child Called It by Dave Pelzer. The Heroine Diaries by Nikki Sixx. I Am Malala by Malala. I don't want to mispronounce her last name, but. And out of these ones, I've read A Child Called It and The Heroine Diaries. Then we have Sounds Like Me by Sarah Bareilles, which I've read. Crazy is My Superpower by A.J. Mendez Brooks. Then I have A Little Bit Wicked by Kristen Chenoweth, which I've not read yet. The Princess Diaries by Carrie Fisher, which I've read. Being Jazz by Jazz Jennings, I've not read yet. Then we have Is Everyone Hanging Out Without Me and Other Concerns by Mindy Kaling, and Why Not Me by Mindy Kaling, I've not read either. Scrappy Little Nobody by Anna Kendrick. Binge by Tyler Oakley, I've not read either. Yes, My Journey to the Main Event of WrestleMania by Daniel Bryan, I've read. Buffering by Hannah Hart, have not read. Brave by Rose McGowan, I've not read. How to Be a Boss by Lily Singh, have not read. And The Only Pirate at the Party by Lindsay Sterling, have not read. Alright, and this last shelf is basically made up comic books, poetry, manga, and miscellaneous books. So let's get started. We have two charm books here, A Tale of Two Pipers and Truth and Consequences, have not read either. Game of Thrones by George R. R. Martin, I've read. Then we have Tanny Huff's Blood books, volume 1, 2, and 3, which has Blood Price, Blood Trail, Blood Lines, Blood Pact, Blood Debt, and Blood Bank, have not read any of them. Suicide Squad by Marv Wolfman, which I've read. Then we have The Wrath and the Dawn and the Rose and the Dagger by Renee Ahdieh, which I've read. Then we have Beautiful Creatures, and then I have under here Beautiful Darkness, Beautiful Chaos, and Beautiful Redemption. I've read Creatures and Darkness, have not read Chaos or Redemption. I have Hearken by Caleb Nation, The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger, Dorothy Must Die, and Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I have not read any of these. So then we have this annotated copy of Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Here first we have my comic books. I have The Killing Joke, V for Vendetta, Suicide Squad Volume 1, Harley Quinn Volume 1, Harley Quinn's Greatest Hits, Batman Mad Love, Black Canary and Zatanna, and Volumes 1 and 2 of the Black Canary comic, Through the Woods, and Sarah Scribbles, Adulthood is a Myth. I've read them all but the Suicide Squad Volume 1 and Harley Quinn Volume 1. Avril Lavigne's Make 5 Wishes Volume 1, which I've read. Lizzie McGuire, it's a comic book of 2 episodes. Then I have volumes 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13 of Mars. I'm hoping one day to get all of them, but it's taking time. And I've read the whole series of Mars. Then I have Alice in the Country of Clovers, Cheshire Cat Waltz Volume 1, which I have not read. Then we have my poetry books. We have Whiskey, Words, and a Shovel Volume 1 by R.H. Sin. Then we have Pillow Thoughts, sorry about the shadows, by Courtney Peppernell, which I've not read. Then we have The Princess Saves Herself in this one, and The Witch Doesn't Burn in this one, both by Amanda Lovelace. I've read The Princess, have not read The Witch yet. Then we have Milk and Honey and The Sun and Her Flowers by Ruby Carr. I've read both. Then we have Adolescence by Gabby Hanna, which I've not read yet. Chasers of the Light by Tyler Knott Gregson. Then I have The Poet by Elizabeth Acevedo. I probably butchered that name, I'm so sorry. Then I have Hamilton, The Revolution by Lin-Manuel Miranda and Jeremy McCarter. which I have not read. Then I have Leah Michelle Brunette Ambition, which I've not read yet. Everything You Need to Ace English Language Arts in One Big Fat Book. And I bought this mainly for reference. I've looked through it, but I haven't like fully read it yet. Then I have this episode guide for Lizzie McGuire. Then I have NXT The Future Is Now, which I have not read. Then we have The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. And these ones here are more like nonfiction. They're not necessarily biographies, or I didn't categorize them as biographies. But Conviction by Juan Martinez. It's about the Jodi Arias case. Then I have Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay, Anne Frank's Diary, In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, The Cage of the Animals at Night, and a little quiz book for Doctor Who. And I have read Anne Frank and In Cold Blood and The Cage of the Animals at Night. So that was my bookshelf tour. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts down below. And also let me know if you want me to do a DVD shelf tour. I've done it before, but I don't know if I'll do it this time. But anyway, hope you enjoyed. Like, favorite, comment, subscribe. Until next time, bye guys.